had the best ice cream ever.
No way.
And rode a bike.
You did ride a bug? Really? And what else?
We went to dance class.
No. You really did go? You like dancing?
Yeah.
You like dancing? Well, I like to dance too when I was young. Would you like me to teach you some steps?
Yeah.
All right, good. So, Kendall, take your jacket off so you will not be hot. You can put it right here. Okay, this dance is called beseda. This is like a traditional Czech dance. Okay, and go something like this. Come and stand up just like this, but to each other. Then put your hands on the hips, and it is starting like this. But you have to smile and look over the shoulder when you will be turning. So we start. First goes like this. Páni dámy, beseda začíná, páni dámy, besedají. Very good. You did so well.
That was so cool.
So cool, right? When we did it, we had so much fun. And maybe you can teach some of your friends too. Yes?
I will.
You will? All right. Good job. Maybe I can teach you some Czech language too. Would you like me to teach you some Czech
That'll
language?
be awesome.
Really? Okay. When you meet a person, so first thing what you say is, in Czech, jak se máš, which means, how are you? So, jak se máš. Repeat it.
Jak se máš?
Oh, you are talented. Excellent. The answer is dobře.
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 Dobře. That means I am fine. Gianna, what school do you go to?
John Pearl.
John Pearl School. That's very nice. And do you know any relatives who came from Czechoslovakia?
Our great grandfather and great grandmother.
And what was their name?
Christoph.
Christoph. So your great pradědeček, prababička přišli z Československa a jmenují se Krištof. Oh, that's very nice. That's very nice. So you and I, we have something similar. Because I came from Czechoslovakia and your grandparents came from Czechoslovakia.
Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Hi,
guys.
Vera. Hi. How you girls doing? You having a good time?
Yeah.
I have to take you though now, Kendall.
Can Gianna come with us?
Well, if it's all right with her Aunt Vera.
Aunt Vera, can I go?
Of course you can go. Of
We're
course.
going to do some cooking.
Okay.
Okay.
So you have to put your jacket on.
Thank you for teaching us the dance and some Czech words.
Oh, of course.
We had so much fun.
I'm so glad. Me too. I love. Can you come sometimes again?
Yeah.
I will continue. We will do more Czech language and more dancing, okay? So go enjoy everything with Grandma. Okay, bye love, bye.
Bye.
We're trying here at the museum to keep our heritage alive, and it's very important. It's just something that's inside you and part of you. There was always a lot of people here. There were, who were from the Czech background and could speak Czech and did speak Czech. Now you don't do that. That's not what you would do. You lose it. You lose that language because there's nobody to speak to. So that's being lost, and it's hard. It's hard to keep that kind of thing alive. So the Czech people, as a whole, were very much into music and education, and along with that came the dancing. The CSA Hall was a great place for dancing, for bazaars and for meetings and various. It was almost like a recreation hall.
All the activities took place there.
Come on, girls. We're going to do a little cooking today. If you have any energy, I know you've been busy all day today. What did you do? What was your day like?
Well, we got some ice cream, we rode our bikes, we went to dance class, then we went to Aunt Vera's house, we learned a Czech dance, then we learned some Czech moves, words, and we also played some music on my iPad.
Wow, iPad. I didn't have an iPad when I was your age. What do you do with it?
Well, it's a device, electronic, that you could download different games on and music and play on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I did a lot of things when I was growing up, but I had no iPad.
So what did you do when you were growing up?
Well,
A lot of the stuff we did as playing was just running around outside. You go in the woods, play at war, build forts. It was hard to play team sports because there weren't that many children in town to play team sports. Once in a while I'd get a softball or baseball game, or once in a while get a basketball game. But most of the time, we were so far away from each other that if 3 or 4 or 5 of us got together, that was what we had.
We played a lot of baseball. We did tumbling, hopscotch, just kind of tag. We did a lot on the monkey bars and that kind of thing. There wasn't much to do. And later, towards the end, we got swings in the play yard. So that was a big thing. And my sister and I, we used to play store in the store. And we used to play army a lot with the boys around that block.
we played outside a lot. It was a quiet neighborhood. There were kids our age, so we enjoyed playing ball, throwing dirt bombs in Mr. Malin's field. Fun things like that. Enjoyed going to the beach in Sayville, and it was just a great place to grow up. I had a playhouse my father built me, so I'd go outside and play house. And my brother would play with me. He'd do whatever I said. I'd dress him up. And I'd make him promise if he played ladies with me, I'd play cowboys and Indians with him later. So that was that was a thing in the late 40s. That's what kids did. They played outside a lot. And inside we'd play, the Lincoln Logs and Tinker Toys, and, there was nothing more fun than going into the attic on a rainy day. So it was simple. It was really simple. No TV at that time.
Life was a lot simpler. Didn't have to be afraid of stranger danger or anything like that. When it was time to come in, one of my friend's mothers had a horn. So she would blow a horn, and we could be half a mile away, and you could hear the horn and come home. And another had a mother with a very loud voice, and when she let loose a yell, you could hear her all over Bohemia.
All right, we're going to make some cake so that when we get back from the parade, we'll have something to eat, some dessert. Okay? You enjoy that? I'm sure you both like cake. Why don't you, Kendall, get the milk out of the icebox and the eggs, and then...
It's an icebox.
It's an old-fashioned refrigerator. There'd be a big block of ice on top, and it would cool the whole refrigerator. So we need you to get the milk and the eggs, and Gianna, you're going to do the stir.
For food, my folks, we ate all kinds of foods that American people eat, like beef and potatoes and vegetables. But there were also Czech foods that were very popular that we had. One of the famous dinners was roast pork and dumplings and sauerkraut, or sometimes duck.
The families here in those early years were, pretty self-sufficient, and they needed to grow their own vegetables, and they farmed the land, and they had chickens and eventually cows. I brought in a picture of my great-grandparents who lived on Locust Avenue. He had 9 children, so he had to farm the land, and be successful at producing a lot of food. All right, girls, have a seat, relax.
So tell us more about the history of Bohemia.
Well, it was originally only 3 families in Bohemia.
There were originally 3 couples who settled in Bohemia. The Vavras, the Kratovilles was another group, and the Kolas was the third group. So the 3 settlers came, the 3 families came and settled out here. There were problems in Europe with religion. The state religion in a lot of the places was Catholicism, and lots of folks didn't want to be Catholics, and so they were looking for freedom to go someplace else.
My mother was their oldest child. She was born in New York. And I think my uncle was also born in New York. And then they moved out here to Bohemia. They bought property here, built a house here. They had another child once they moved out here. And they had a poultry farm. And this is where my family was since about 1920 or so.
Most of this land was owned by a man named Wallace. And these three families had originally came and settled in New York City. After they settled in New York City, one of them, the Barbaras, my great-grandmother's uncle, was sick. He couldn't live in the city, and he needed air. The doctor told him they needed air. So they bought property. As far as I know, they never even looked at the property. When they got here, what they found was just a lot of what you see if you go to some of the places undeveloped now, a lot of pin oaks, a lot of scrub oak, a lot of pine, and had just been burned out. So when they came into a really kind of barren-looking area. They were, at that time, along the Great South Bay in towns like Sayville and West Sayville and Oakdale. There were a lot of estates. And so they got jobs on the estates, and they would walk the 3 miles from Bohemia to those places.
The lace mill was in Patchogue. Many people worked at the lace mill. They went there for employment. Cigar factory, that industry, the cigar making, came with the Czech people to New York City, and there was a lot of industry in there. The cigar making was there, and then they brought it here. With some people, it was a cottage industry. They did it right in their homes, and then there were a number of cigar factories around town. There was a button factory. There was a handbag factory. One of the cigar factories was then a bathrobe factory. When I was a kid growing up, you went to Savenka's, and it was just the place where everybody would be. You never went in there and you were alone. There was always somebody in there who you knew and who knew you.
Well, it was a grocery store, but he also sold shoes, and he sold work shirts, and he had gas, and he had kerosene, and it was just a little of everything.
In the 40s, late 40s, that's where my mother did all her shopping. There was a butcher shop next to my grandparents' house, and so she bought her meats there.
There was also a bakery in town that was famous for its baked goods, and people would come, not just Czech people, from all over to get the breads, to get the special pastries that they made. On a Sunday afternoon, you could smell, they were baking the bread, you could smell it all over town, and everybody would come to buy the breads.
Post office, as I remember it, was on Smithtown Avenue. I guess there's an office in there, a dentist now in that building. It was in two parts. There was the post office, and there was you could walk through the door, and there was a candy store there where you could get your newspaper and so on. And then from there, it moved to Church Street, and there was a post office there for a while. And then as the town grew, they anticipated more factories and industry, light industry coming here into the community. They moved the post office over to Orville Drive.
And then a schoolhouse was built that only had one room.
There were two schools at the time. There was a Catholic school and the public school. I went to the Catholic school. There were only 2 classrooms in the Catholic school. I'm sure children today can't imagine a school with 2 classrooms where there was one teacher, one nun, one sister, teaching 4 grades. In the public school, there were 4 classrooms where they had a teacher for 2 grades.
I started in John Pearl's school, and we had a class of 13. When I went to John Pearl's school, it was a 4-room schoolhouse. And when I was ready to graduate, the new school was built, and that had 8 rooms in it. And we were the first. We went to school in the old schoolhouse, but the new school was open, and we were the first graduating class in that school. Me and my 13 friends.
We walked in through the back door, and there was a foyer with a hall that had hooks for your coats. You'd hang up your coat and you'd go to your classroom. On the right was 1st and 2nd grade together. On the left was third and fourth, and then upstairs were the upper grades. My teachers were wonderful ladies until I got to seventh grade. I had Mr. Pearl, who the John Pearl School is named after, and Mr. Ostrom. And up until then, all my teachers were women. I had great teachers, and it was 2 grades in 1 classroom.
The bell was rang every morning, and it's still there. We now have it on the lawn of the school that's there now, and it's taken care of by the society, the Historical Society.
Everybody had a fairly big piece of property. Almost everybody had some kind of garden. They had grew vegetables in the summertime. I remember when I was a kid, in fact, a man with a horse used to come around to plow the fields. He'd plow the field, and we would go after him planting potatoes in half of it and then planting other kinds of vegetables in the other part of the field. So a lot of this was the landscape houses. There were a couple of main streets, but once you got off the main street, there was lots of woods. People had big backyards, a couple of acres of yards, plenty of place to run around and play in.
There was a lot of empty lots and things, and like we have a lot of houses and people, like we were a small village, and now there's just people and schools and, so much different. We used to go to Sayville to go to high school, and now we have like 3 elementary schools and a high school.
There's a lot of things here in this town. When you look around at the schools, at the firehouse, at the library, they weren't always here. Somebody had to build them. Somebody had to make them.
Wow, a lot has changed since back then.
There have been a lot of changes. A lot of the buildings that used to be around when I was your age aren't around anymore. They burned down.
Why did so many buildings burn down?
Well, the equipment that they used years ago wasn't quite as good as the equipment that we have today. And the fire department has always been active since probably before 1900. But now the equipment is so great that it's really important that the fire department exists so that they can protect the community.
One of the ways of growing up in Bohemia was when you were 16 years old, you could join the fire department.
When the fire was the blue, everybody was out, whether they were making sandwiches or fighting the fire. The whole town almost participated.
I'm a past captain, and I'm an active duty firefighter and active duty medic. But as soon as I joined and started seeing what they did here, I fell in love with the whole concept. And at that point, I knew I was going to make a career out of it. Having some 3,000 acres of woodland bordering our district. And some of the fires I fought early on went on for days. We'd relieve a crew and they go back to quarters and sleep for a while, and then they get reassigned. And it was big fires. Something like, but smaller than they have in California. We started in 1893, and it was all water feed. We had small pumps, we had small trucks, we had a minimal amount of training, usually here at the facility. And we now train at the same facilities that the city trains at. We now have equipment that is either at or better than professional firefighting groups, New York included. We train practically every day. There's a class. When I joined, we had rubber suits and leather helmets, leather boots, rubber boots, and you could get in trouble going too far, too fast. Now we have these just monumental clothing. It's called turnout gear, practically fireproof, fire resistant to say the least. And you can go farther and faster, and it's lighter. You can carry a lot of gear with you, which we do. The difference it makes is the evolution time. That is to say, the amount of time that we take to put out a fire. When I joined, we had cotton hose, cloth hose, 1.5 inches diameter. And now we have 1.75 inches, and the volume of water that passes that differentially is huge.
The fire department played a very important role. Just about every young man was involved in the fire department. In the beginning, when the community was still small, the people were very involved. It was not only being there for the community and helping to save a house, there was a lot of wood, so there were fires. Early on, my grandfather used to say they never saved a house.
The racing team started out as a practice team. They took events that were nominal here, like running up a ladder, and they made a competition out of it. How fast could you run down the driveway, run up a ladder, and hit a stop point? They made a challenge out of it. We had some of the fastest ladder climbers in Suffolk County. We had the squirrel, Babe to May, a very slightly built man, and very, very strong. And he used to climb that ladder. That it's like he was going up the stairs, jumping off, hooking hoses together, putting water into the hose, and putting the nozzle on a target, and it all evolved in things that we actually saw: climbing ladders, fighting fire with water, and they evolved it into a series of contests to sharpen up everybody's abilities, and it kind of grew to its own thing. It became the races.
As a kid, it was very exciting to hear that black truck coming down.
And when they came home from other towns at night, they'd walk through the town blowing their bugles and everything, and then you knew it. They won at the competition.
And in the early 50s, the women decided to make an auxiliary where they could help the firemen by, if there was a fire, make sandwiches for them and kind of be there to be supportive.
Why is this dress in here?
Well, this is an old wedding dress, about over 100 years old, and it belonged to my grandma. My grandma got married in this dress, and we've saved it and taken good care of it, and now Kendall, your aunt, is going to wear it when she gets married.
So is this a traditional wedding dress?
Yes, it's very much like the ladies wore in the early 1900s when they got married. I have some vintage clothing that you might enjoy wearing or trying on. Check costumes that are very colorful and pretty, and I have some vintage nightgowns too. Would you like to try those on?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The art, they were always very interested in art. The Czech people brought that with them also. Here at the museum, you could see some of the artwork in the furniture that we have, and some of the artifacts as far as the pottery and so on that they did. Now their artwork, if you were to go to New York City, to the National Hall, they have art displays there, and sometimes it's very modernistic. This particular yizba that you see here is very unique to Czechoslovakia. You can see it in the pottery, and here you see it in the furniture. The Czech crystal that's also on display, very often that's red. And if you put your hand on it, it's not smooth. It's got a sharp cut to it, and there's a specific design in many of it. It looks like a multi-pointed star. The ladies also did a folk dance. It was a national folk dance, and it was called the Beseda. And it was more of a celebratory. You did it, you just didn't walk around town doing this Beseda. It was done for a purpose, usually.
And we had Mrs. Rose Emma. She taught the young girls how to do it. So I danced the dance, I guess, for maybe 58 years.
We had absolutely wonderful, wonderful dances. And here in Bohemia, in a museum, there used to be a group of ladies who perform the Czech dance Beseda.
You girls look beautiful. Both of you look great. Maybe you could do the Beseda in those costumes. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go check on the cake, and maybe you can practice the dance.